All right, so there's another object I want to draw in perspective. So this is just something I printed out, and this is how it looks. And you might look at this and say, how does that exist on a cube in 2-point perspective? So to simplify things, you can rotate it like this. And if you rotate it like this, then I'll show you how the cube exists. You just change your horizon line level with you. If you did want to draw it this way, your horizon line would just be on a diagonal, as if you were turning your head on a diagonal and your eyes were going that direction. But make it easy on us, we're just going to simplify it. So this line right here, this corner right here, I'm just going to make it perpendicular to the plane of my chest. So first thing I'm going to do is just put a line there. That represents the corner that's closest to me in a 2-point perspective rectangle. I'm just going to kind of draw a 2-point perspective rectangle really quickly. Oops. Something along the lines of that. Maybe this isn't as dramatic, but the same concept. So this line right here basically is this line. Next thing I'm going to do is draw a line following this bottom line here all the way out as far as I can. Now, to find your vanishing point, what would you do is you would take this corner line and then draw this out, and then wherever they would converge, which is way down there, would be the vanishing point. In this case, when I draw this on a blank piece of paper, I'm going to put my vanishing points on the paper, so it's going to distort it a little bit. It's not going to look exactly like that. And that's the kind of issues that you're going to come up with, which is a fine issue to have. It's just, you're just using this as a starting point. So the next thing I'm going to draw right here is a straight line. And then I'm going to draw this line underneath. And the reason I'm just drawing this on top of, because it helps me understand the rectangle. And then do you see this right here, this highest point, which is the highest point of this shape of the electrical cord. And it doesn't really give me a clear direction of where this angle would be. The only evidence I have of how to angle this ruler is I know that it has to converge, so I have to angle it towards this line. The other evidence right here is these 2 points right here, where these the prongs actually meet the face of the cord. So like right there. And this might actually help me quite a bit. If I follow this line straight out, right? And then if I follow this line straight out, maybe they'll meet. They almost meet right at the edge of that paper. So I could take a pretty good guess and just say, looks a little funky though, doesn't it? Looks a little too dramatic to me. I'm not sure if I'm attaching this right. I have a feeling it might be actually up here. So I take that back. The nice thing about these colored pencils is they're erasable. So the printout I have isn't the best, and I just thought that was too dramatic of an angle. So I think I'm just going to go with my intuition. And as you can see, this red line here overlapping, it's parallel. You can make it parallel, and then you can angle it towards, so it will converge. And you kind of do something like that. So I feel a little better about that angle. It's not going to be as dramatic in this viewpoint. This is kind of based from the actual observation of the form. Also known as photography. So I took this corner and I drew it out there. And do you see this corner here? I'm going to take this corner and I'm going to do the same thing. So it's going to be, again, my vanishing point is way out there. So I'm kind of like inventing the angle, but I know it's going to converge. So you can kind of see how these converge. Next thing I'm going to do is, there's two separate things. There's one, you can break this electrical cord into two different components. There's three. Actually, these prongs, this big heavy body part, and then this cord where it starts to begin and then it starts to turn. This really doesn't turn that much, maybe slightly, but this has a big turn. I'm not really concerned about that. That's easy to put in. This is tricky where it connects to the back of this the main body. So what I'm going to do is, if you see this line here, remember all of our vertical lines are just going to remain vertical. We're not going to incorporate 3-point perspective, so we're just going to keep it simple in that regard. So I drew a line straight up, and then right where it meets this, I'm going to draw a line straight over. I think it's safe to say it's right there. So as you can see, the center of this cube, and how we can kind of break this form out, exists right here. So it's good to draw the cube around it and be like, oh, that's the original cube. Everything can be derived from a cube. And then after that, what I would do is I would use that back face. I would draw this as it's transparent, and I would use that back face to figure out this stuff. So that can be a second portion of the project. So what I'm gonna do now, I use this as my source, and I'm holding it like this. I could, as you can see, I turn it like this. You can see my horizon line would actually be on a diagonal. That's what I was talking about before, but now I'm gonna turn it back to here where this is facing me. So what I'm gonna do is, another thing to notice is your eye level is higher than the form. So here, I'm gonna draw in blue. I'm gonna put my horizon line up here, which is where my vanishing points are gonna go, and it's also where also represents my eye level. So the one on the far right, I'm gonna put as far over as I possibly can right here. The one on the left side, I think I'm just gonna put like maybe a little bit in, because I'm trying to get a bit of a diagonal there. So what I'm gonna do next, actually, you know what? I changed my mind. Instead of moving the vanishing points, I'm gonna keep this out here. I'm just gonna move my object over to the left. But if I had to keep my object central, then I would move this over to the right. So I'm gonna put my object, I'm drawing the center line first. Whenever you draw a 2-point perspective, that's the line you wanna draw first. I'm gonna put it right here. Just throwing the line in. I don't know where the beginning or the end is yet, but I'm just gonna say, let's just make this the bottom. Make this the top. Okay? After that, I'm gonna connect it to the left vanishing point. I'm gonna connect this to the right vanishing point. And again, I'm just using this as a guide. So the face of it, and then sometimes I like to rough this in. I suggest to rough it in first before you commit to the ruler, because if you have to change your mind, you gotta erase those lines. So I'm just kind of like throwing this in like so, and I'm just taking a peek. I'm like, this is gonna do something like this. Is at the scale I wanna work in. Now notice, that's what I was talking about distortion. See how much this pulls towards you? It's because these vanishing points are closer than they exist here, and this doesn't really pull as much towards you. It's just based on photograph. This is just based on pure perspective. I'm okay with that. This doesn't take it out of proportion too much. So I'm gonna draw a line down. I'm gonna draw a line down here. Notice I'm using the bottom of the ruler to line up with the edge of the paper to make sure that I'm drawing straight vertical lines. And once this line intersects this line, this orthogonal line that goes to the vanishing point, I'm going to connect it to the right side. See, this line connects this guy to the, I'm going to connect it to the left side. And they both meet right here, and I just like to put a little point just so I know where those forms meet. I could make this transparent, but I just want to confuse everybody at the moment. I just wanted to keep this simple in the beginning. Actually, I will make it transparent because I think I'm going to use I think I'm going to change the color that I'm working with. So to make this transparent, all I do is I run that corner to the left vanishing point as I just did. I drop a line down. I'm doing this very lightly. And this back corner here, connect to the right vanishing point, and they all should meet at the same spot, which is right here. All these lines meet. So you can kind of see how that's transparent now. Make it a little darker. Okay, so that's that. I guess I'll go to my green now. What I want to do is I want to draw, you know what, I think I'm going to go to my red. And I recommend keeping it sharpened. I think this is more orange. So what I want to do is I just want to draw this shape right here. This shape right here. In order to do that, I'm going to go back to my green. In order to do that, I need to divide the space in half. How do I divide the space in half? I cross my corners on the face of this form. That finds my center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my center point and draw a line straight up, a vertical line. Now I know where the center is because this exists at the center. This little ridge here goes across this, right down here. That's the center point. That's important. I'm going to do the same thing on the back face. Find my center, draw a line vertical. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect those 2 points. And in theory, they should connect. They don't always connect perfectly, but they should connect. And you know, I'm just going to connect the bottom part. I think the more lines you have, the better. Now, they're not going to be, this misses it just a hair. It's not a big deal. It's just because, you know, sometimes the pencil's thicker and it doesn't connect to the vanishing point, or the vanishing point's too big and you use the top part instead of the bottom part. All right, so I'm just using this now as a guide. So I want to make sure it's still in the video, okay? So I think I'm gonna work on this shape here first. What I'm trying to do now is right around here, right, this little ridge here, to me, I can just take a visual assessment. It looks like half the size from here to here. It looks like half the distance between the top and the bottom. That's just a really easy, simple thing to do. I'm just gonna half this plane. And remember, when you cross your corners, it automatically finds your center. I found my center. I'm gonna use the vanishing point to draw this line because it's parallel to these 2 lines. General rule, parallel lines converge to the same vanishing point, always. And then I'm just gonna run this over to the other side. You can see I haven't even drawn anything yet in terms of the form itself, but I did break this down in half. And this is a really simple form because I've got a lot of information that I need to figure this out. The next thing I'm gonna do is, I think I'm going to, trying to really study this form here. I think I'm gonna put a little point right here. The reason I'm doing that, this represents that little divot, like the low point. And that low point, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna connect it to the high point there. Where this intersects this guy, I'm going to run it over to the vanishing point so I can find it on the other side. And then I'm gonna connect that point there. I don't know if you can see this. Like so. So it's the same on the other side. And then I'm gonna connect this point here. It almost looks like a straight line, but it's not. And I'll explain this in a minute. This goes to here. The rest of it stays the same. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to draw this, and then I'll use my red pen to pencil to go on top of it. So I'm gonna make a little bit of a round here, going down to that point I just made. And then I'm gonna curve it out, like so. And then you can kind of see, oh, I thought this would show up better, but I guess it's not. You can kind of see it wrap around. So that's the front face. That's basically this right here. You repeat that same thing on the back face. which is pretty simple, in order to get these little points that I made on the back side, because I did cross my triangle, or my, the plane there. I take it, I put my point of my pencil here, I get my ruler, I put it right along that line, I connect the other side to the right vanishing point, and I run my pencil across until I intersect that line. And again, these lines are gonna get really confusing, so you have to put these little dots there. That dot is the same as this dot, it's just on the back side. Same goes with this side. I take this, I run it to the right side, I run it over, it's right there, put a little dot. So I have that. And basically, I could connect this with the straight lines, which I think I will. What I haven't done yet is where these intersect here. I never connected to the left vanishing point. There you go, I just did it now. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in. And I can't stress enough to keep your pencils sharp. Oops. Remember, this part is transparent, or not transparent. You won't be able to see it, so I can always like get my ruler or my eraser and lighten the line, but the right side's fine. I think I went out a little bit too much here. But you just go back in and you clean it up and perfect it the way you want it. So that's done, right? And this is a hard edge, or a sharp edge. So I'm just gonna leave that sharp edge there. Now the next thing, and I don't want, I'm looking at time here, okay. These little prongs coming up, 1, 2, 3, pretty simple. This one's just a circle that comes out from this section here. I just have to find the center point and then make a square, and then I make a circle and a square, and then I just pull that out in the same direction, connecting to that vanishing point. The same goes with these guys. These are actually easier because they're square. I'm not gonna go ahead and do these little circles here. You can figure that out later. That's gonna take too much time at the moment. But use my green. I guess I'll go back, use my green. I'm trying to figure out if I were to, since I said this was the halfway point here, and if I took it across this direction to this vanishing point, you can kind of see this line, right? This is below that halfway point quite a bit, not that much, but it's below the halfway point. So that's information that I know I can make it more accurate with. And it doesn't touch the bottom. It's a little bit inset in from the bottom. That being said, I can probably just put a line at the bottom. Sorry, should use my green. Could have put a line at the bottom, so that's going to represent the bottom part. This is the halfway point that I was talking about. So I'm just going to go a little bit lower than that right here. And again, I just took an estimated guess, and now I'm just putting a mark down, and I'm going to commit to it. Okay, so that is the height of these two little prongs. Now the prong is inset a little bit on the right-hand side, and it's inset the same distance on the left-hand side. What I can do is utilize that diagonal line that I have there. It's still there. I'm just gonna make it a little bit clearer so you can see what I'm talking about. And the diagonal line exists on this side too. So what I'm gonna do is to say, I'm gonna say that it's about this far in from the edge. And that's just me guessing. And then after that, since these are just vertical lines straight up, I'm just line it up with that there, and I'm gonna put a line straight up and down. Oops. Now, how do you get this little point on the other side? So where this intersects, this line intersects it, you just run it over to the other side, but you have to connect it to the vanishing point, which is right here. That's where it intersects, and now I'm gonna put a vertical line. And this basically is the exterior part of this. I'm going to, because there's some dimension to it, so that it has a little bit of I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch or something like that, but I'm just gonna draw a little line there. And then it's so small that I can just say, well, this would be a little bit thinner, so I'm just gonna throw a line in. I don't have to stress about it and try to make it perfect. It's going to be something along the lines of that. But you can kind of see how it gets smaller as it goes back in space. So I basically made where these things begin to come out of that part, which is all the legwork. The hard part, or that's the hard part. The easy part is taking these four corners and running lines out in this direction. But because these prongs are parallel to this, they go to the same vanishing point. So you just use this vanishing point, line up those corners with that vanishing point, and then you run them out. Now, I went pretty far out. That's not how long they are. Unless you want to deliberately make something out of scale, which is fine for humor purposes. Now, one of them is, you won't see that much because it's just transparent, or the form is not transparent, but you can kind of get the idea. So then the length of these looks like, I can use my pencil and just measure the length, and I can compare it to the width here, and it looks like it's about from here to here. So I'm just gonna take that, I wanna put it here and be like, I think that's about good. So I'm going to run a line straight up to here, okay? And then I'm gonna cut it across both sides, but it goes to this vanishing point right there. And then I'm gonna run it down. Oops. Need a little bit more dimension than that. Am I missing something here? This is where a sharp pencil helps out. There we go. Tried to make it a little thicker than I should have run it both on the other side. So you can kind of see these little prongs. And if you want, you can lighten this out, but you can always use a different color to make this pop. Probably this dark red might work even better, or just a dark blue. Anything just to get, so you can see what the heck you're doing. The next thing, oh, what's easy about this, I'm just looking at time, 22 minutes, all right. These almost look like rounds, right? Really simple. I mean, they're a little different. They're kind of a hard edge, but I'm gonna make them rounds. So whenever you're gonna make rounds, especially something that's small, you wanna sharpen your pencil. And you just make rounds. And you bring it to the other side, which you know how to do this with parallel line drawing, as I've showed you before. Oops. And we can run the other side. So this. So you can kind of see how I just quickly rounded those out. It's a simple process. This right here, this is gonna get technical. A lot of people just want to make a circle and put it in, but remember, a circle comes from a square, and you might want to know how to draw a perfect square in perspective, and that gets super complicated. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw something that is square-like. So maybe I'm gonna sketch it in first. That to me is square-like. Over here, I'm still using those diagonal lines as a guide. And that looks like a square to me. And then what you can do is you cross your corners. This is so small that instead of crossing the corners, I think I'm just gonna make a circle inside of the square. But you need some form of a guide, and this helps tremendously. So once you have that circle, then you take the highest point, connect it to your vanishing point there on the right, and just draw a line straight out. And then you take the bottom part, connect to the vanishing point, and again, draw a line straight out. And then, actually, it's good I drew the square because I'm gonna show you how it's gonna be needed in a second. I'm gonna take I'm gonna take all 4 corners, draw it out, not to confuse myself with the round part, which I'm going to do with a different color right now. So this is the round part. The reason I'm doing all this is because I have to draw the round end. And you just don't throw it in, you got to use perspective, you got to do all this stuff I'm doing. Once you have that, you can end it about the same height as this guy. So what I would do is follow this up about right here. So this should be like kind of the ending part. So I'm going to draw a line straight here, straight up, goes over to the left side. And you can probably tell right now, this is where things can get a little dicey because of all the lines. And I'm just trying to remember where I was. It goes here. Okay, so it's somewhat square, same square as that guy. And then from that point on, what I'm gonna do is just make a circle within there. And then I'm just gonna round that circle to the point, round the circle to the point, and then you kind of have this like curved shape that kind of comes out. So that's there. And then the rest of it is somewhat complex in the back, but I'm just gonna try to get through it really quickly because this is a long video. What I would do with that is, since I already have this face drawn and I know where my center point is, that's super important. I think I'm even going to take that center point and just draw it to the vanishing point, just so I know that's center. I might even draw center on that, just so I remember that that line is center. Basically what's happening here, if you can look at this, this is just an elliptical shape. An ellipse is right here, right? This is an ellipse, this is an ellipse, this is an ellipse, this is an ellipse, this is an ellipse. There's like 4 ellipses right here, but they're all based off the center of this rectangle, but they're just smaller than the rectangle themselves. So all you have to do is go out as far as, I say like right here, and then down. Does that make sense? So you're just gonna go out maybe even the same distance as this, because it goes back in space. Actually, I'll show you how to make it the same distance. I'm gonna take this corner, go through the center line, which is right here, and run it down. That right there is the same distance. That's equivalent to this size because I went through the center line. I went from the corner through the center line and drew a line straight down, just like so. And where that line intersects this line is where you can put your new, actually I think I'm gonna do it in blue, your new rectangle to build from or subtract from. And then after that, this is my center line. I think this ellipse is stepped back a little bit and then this is connected to it, kind of like this. So what I'm gonna do is just designate, I'm gonna say, I'll start that ellipse here. So I'm gonna go back from this corner, just a hair, connected to the vanishing point, and then go down. Okay, this is where this ellipse is gonna begin, and I'll explain myself in a second. And then from this point down straight, down. Okay, see this rectangle right here? This blue guy, I'm gonna put an arrow there. It's going all the way down. That is this rectangle I'm gonna use, or I'm sorry, square that I'm gonna use to find the center point to make my ellipse. Now again, my ellipse is kind of thick there, so I'm going to put the thickness in right now as well. Oh man, my ruler slid on me. Okay, and this goes down there. And this goes across. So you can kind of see I just drew these 2 in. Now this is, again, where things can get very confusing and you want to throw in the towel on this project, but don't do it. Just really focus on that. And if you have to erase the stuff in here so you can clearly see that, do it. You can always go back and redraw it back in. So what I am, I'll lightly take some of this out so I can clearly see this thing. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cross my corners. I'm gonna use a different color for this, just across the corners so I can kind of explain myself. Cross my corners. Cross my corners. And remember what you're crossing, because sometimes you'll forget and you cross it with another shape. Make a vertical line. I'm gonna make a line connecting to that vanishing point. So it's gonna look like this. You will do the same thing to the form behind it, and then after that you're gonna draw your ellipse. Now remember that center line that I put in? It goes through that center, so it already exists there. But again, this is smaller than the exterior of this whole rectangle. So I'm not gonna make a circle here, otherwise it's gonna be too big. So I'm gonna make it a little smaller. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go down a little bit from here, from the very top, connect it to the left vanishing point, run it across. I'm gonna run it down. I'm gonna run it across again. I'm gonna run it up. It should meet where it started. This is now my new circle. So you can make your circle inside of this guy. But there's another way of going about this that's even more technical. And I'm gonna do this on the side, and then I will stop because it's becoming a long video. So I have something that looks like this, right? That represents that. It's just a larger version of it. I'm going to connect my corners. That finds my center. I connect my center to the vanishing point. I'm just kind of making this up, you know, where my vanishing point is. And then I put my vertical line in. From that point on, what you can do is you visually half this, the distance between the center and the corner, and then you visually half it again. You do that on the 4 diagonals. Half it here, half it here. Half it here, half it here, half it here, and then half it here. And then you connect it all the way around. And you kind of see there's a circle starting to form. And then after that, you can, I'll use a different color. You can start to make that circle. You just add a little bit to it and just try to make this circle as fluid as you possibly can. This is how you're gonna do wheels as well, and I'm gonna do a separate video on that guy. But you can kind of see how this becomes circular. So that's why I just kind of quickly did it, because it was small and I didn't, but if it was larger, you definitely want to do that. But you can just kind of half, half, half. Connect, 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 and then you put your circle in. So I'm just gonna do a quick version of it right now. And then there's the one in the back that does the same thing, so you have to draw this behind it, so there's a thickness to it, because there's 2 ellipses here. It's a thick part, so there's one in the front, one in the back. And then there's this little thing here, which is all the same size, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ellipses there too. This should take a long time, but to be honest, it's gonna make your drawing look really good in the end. It's gonna have a lot of activity there. The more ellipses, the better it looks. And again, you can, at the very, very end, you can take another pencil, this orange again, I meant to get my red. Go back on top of some of these things with a different color, just so things kind of pull forward. And if that doesn't work, you can use like a darker blue. Just don't use black because you want to kind of retain this as being color pencils. After you put these lines in and then you finish this out, then you can lighten this with either kneaded eraser or just an eraser itself, and then reestablish the lines that you put here in the first place. They're still there. They're just really light right now. And then that way that will pull forward, this will recede in space, and it'll look super complex. But to be honest, this really isn't that complicated of a form. As long as you know the system, you can figure anything out in perspectives.